How's it going, everybody? Noah from Stage 3 Motorsports here, and today I wanted to bring you kind of a news update video to talk about some stuff that Ford has in the works for their Tremor package. And the two headlines you've probably seen are, firstly, that for 2023, there's going to be a Tremor package available for the Maverick, which is kind of a neat surprise. And the other headline is that in 2023, you're going to have the option to run the 5-liter Coyote V8 in the Tremor package of the F-150. So I'll touch on the F-150 in a little bit, but I want to focus in on the Maverick first. Right off the bat, the first thing to note is that on the Maverick, you have to option either an XLT or a Lariat trim to add the Tremor package onto it. It's not technically its own standalone trim package. And there also seems to be an additional visual trim package that you can add on top of that changes some decals and little things along the way. But primarily, you just need an XLT or a Lariat to get this done. The other thing worth noting is that the Tremor package isn't compatible with the hybrid drivetrain, so you're going to have to switch to the 2-liter EcoBoost 4-cylinder that has that 8-speed automatic, which I think this is still a great powertrain, and I don't think a lot of people will take issue with that. But for those of you that really like the hybrid drivetrain or were wanting that additional fuel economy, this is kind of a bummer. Although it's one of those things where if you're going for an off-road package, I don't know how focused you are on fuel economy altogether. So it really depends on the person, but I think the 2-liter is going to be just fine. The other thing worth noting is that the Tremor package has new suspension, and it's basically giving you new springs and new shocks that add an additional inch of lift to the truck, and the valving is a little bit different as well, just to make it more accommodating in the dirt and on rough terrain. Now, as great as a 1-inch lift is, the thing that I think makes the biggest difference here is that they've pulled the all-wheel drive system from the Bronco Sport Badlands and moved that over to the Maverick. So it seems to be a bit more of a competent, more capable off-road all-wheel drive system than what the Maverick initially had. And probably the most important part of this is that it's using that Dana twin-clutch rear drive unit that you would get from the Badlands Bronco Sport as well. Now, the rear drive unit is pretty much a replacement for a standard rear differential, since that truck doesn't have a rear diff in the traditional sense that you would think of with like a Bronco or an F-150 or any regular pickup truck. So this unit has 2 clutches. There's one on each axle shaft, and that's basically diverting power to both of the wheels, and it can kind of alternate and theoretically apply just all of the power to one wheel if it needs to, or split it between them. And what makes this kind of special is that it also allows this truck to have the ability to run a sort of simulated rear locker. And when you hear a lot of places talk about this and the way Ford describes it, they just call it a rear diff lock, but it's not technically locking anything because it's not a rear differential. So what you're doing when you select the rear diff lock on this is basically telling the computer to apply more pressure more frequently to those clutches and helping it to basically more actively search out wheels with traction. So that way it's pushing power to the wheel that bites, and it keeps you from just slipping or getting that one wheel peel effect. So it is a little more complicated and has a bit more electronic involvement than just a regular diff lock would, but I do think that this is an awesome upgrade because it will massively improve the little Maverick's capability off-road, especially in some cross-axle terrain where, the 1-inch of lift is going to get you a little more ground clearance, but you're still going to be lifting wheels. So something like this makes a huge difference in just how far you can push the Maverick platform. I think it's also worth pointing out that because it's not a true lock differential, it will still allow the wheels to slip while you turn, so the Maverick can also pull a bit of a tighter corner while still utilizing the additional traction. So yes, it is allowing a wheel to spin freely, but then as soon as you're rolling straight again or on an obstacle, it's kind of locking it back up for you. So I think that also is a big benefit in terms of maneuverability. Some other things you'll see added with the Tremor package are going to be 5 different drive modes, and this is going to be where you can select either mud and ruts or snow and ice, sand, whatever it may be, and the truck will change its traction control parameters and kind of adjust how it puts the power down to get you better traction in those different terrains. And I believe this will also still involve a sport mode and stuff like that, so it'll change the shift points and also help the truck to feel a bit more peppy on the street if that's what you're looking for. But those modes are cool. I don't find myself personally using them a whole lot on the vehicles where we have the drive modes like the Bronco, but it is an option that I always say is great for beginners or people who are new to the off-road scene because it can help you get onto some more technical terrain that you might not otherwise be able to tackle without completely understanding how the off-road workings of the truck actually make it happen. So it's a great way to learn while you get used to learning how to use the truck's equipment. On top of this, Ford has also added their trail control feature, which is sort of an off-road cruise control where you select a speed, which is usually pretty slow, only a couple miles an hour, but You select a speed and the truck will manage finding the traction and applying the power where it's needed or to whatever wheel needs it. And all you have to do is focus on steering and picking a line and then tapping the brakes if you want to slow it down. So this is another great option for people who are beginners or are getting used to the truck on the trail. And it can definitely be a big benefit if you find yourself in a hairier situation than you were anticipating, or maybe on a trail that's a little too technical for your skill range. Now, there are a few other changes that Ford made to the Tremor package that show that they were thinking in terms of practicality and not just fun gadgets. So one of those things is going to be a beefier transmission cooler, and then they've also added on some stronger half shafts to go with it. So now with the additional strain on the transmission of off-road driving, and then of course the risk of wheels kind of biting and slipping as tires are searching for traction, having those half shafts and the transmission cooler upgraded just gives this truck a better shot at true longevity on the trail, and you don't run as much of a risk of wearing things out prematurely just because you wanted to use it off-road. So I'm really happy to see that Ford took that stuff into account, and like I said, it makes the Tremor package feel a little bit more than just a sticker package or a locker button. It's really kind of changing the way that the Maverick works off-road. Moving to the outside of the rig, you can tell that Ford has changed it quite a bit styling-wise for the Tremor package, and not all of it is there just for looks. Some of it is actually practical as well. So one of the first things is that front fascia has been redesigned to give it a better approach angle, so that way you're not just stuffing it into rocks and tearing apart plastic underneath. Then they've also added in some skid plates underneath to protect the engine and vital components along the way. And you're also getting 17-inch aluminum wheels that seem to have that metallic magnetic gray finish on them with orange accents on a couple of the spokes. I think it looks really sharp. And then you'll also see that orange ties into some other accents around the truck with the little badges on the fenders and the orange tow hooks. And then they've blacked out a couple things too. So there's a Tremor specific grille, you get the blacked out headlights, and a couple other little accents like blacked out badges. Overall, I've got to say I'm a big fan of the way that the Tremor package looks here. This is really appealing to me for the Maverick platform, and I think that Ford did a good job of providing real value. So the package itself, from what I've seen online, is going to be a $2,995 upgrade, which, like I said, would be an upgrade over your XLT or Lariat trim. But for about $3,000, it's a big chunk of change, but you're also getting pretty good bang for your buck. And with something that's this practical, I could see a lot of folks being willing to make that jump. As much as I like it, and I think it's a good value proposition, and I like the way that it looks, there are still a few drawbacks. And one of the first ones I mentioned is that you can't get the hybrid drivetrain. So that is a bummer right now, but hopefully that changes in the future. The other one is that the Maverick normally offers 1,500 pounds of payload capacity, but with the Tremor package, it brings it down to 1,200 pounds. So it's not the end of the world, and for the most part, with a bed that small, I don't think people were maxing out payload capacity or probably doing a lot of heavy-duty hauling with this truck. But if that was a concern for you, it is slightly lower with this package. And the other thing to note is that with the Tremor package, it's only capable of towing 2,000 pounds, and you can't add on that 4,000 pound towing package that you would normally have. So once again, it is a bit of a bummer. I think for a lot of folks, if they are pulling anything with the Tremor package, it's probably gonna be really lightweight little camper trailers or tent trailers that aren't going to put too much strain on there. But for the most part, I don't see people towing with these trucks that frequently. And I think if you're looking for the kind of off-road capability that this package offers, this probably won't be a deal breaker for you. So as a whole, this seems like a really smart move on Ford's part. Moving right along to talking about the F-150 Tremor, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, that vehicle will now in 2023 have the option to run the 5-liter V8. And I say option, but it's actually going to be the standard engine option for the Tremor package, and then you can upgrade to the 3.5-liter twin-turbo EcoBoost, which was previously the standard engine option in that package. To me, this is a great option to have. I know that a lot of folks are just fine with the EcoBoost, and I personally think it's a great motor. Our Silver 2021 is a 3.5 EcoBoost, and it is rocket fast, just ridiculous amounts of power. So there really was nothing wrong with that motor, but the V8s have been disappearing, not just from Ford, but pretty much every manufacturer these days. And it's nice to have that variety and still be able to get a little bit more of an old-fashioned feel out of that truck. And I will say, in terms of off-road capability, while the V8 doesn't make as much power as the EcoBoost option does, it's a little more predictable and a little more comfortable off-road. Firstly, I like the sound, and the way that it puts down torque is just a little bit more smooth. And because it's not turbocharged, it doesn't have as much of a tendency to basically spool up, make a ton of power, and break the tires free. So with it being naturally aspirated, I think it's just a little more predictable and a little smoother in the dirt. So it makes a lot of sense here with the Tremor package. The one drawback is because it is the newer version of the 5.0 that you could get in the regular F-150, it does still have cylinder deactivation, and that's not a feature that anybody really likes. I am not a fan and haven't been a fan even in other manufacturers that have run that. So it is a bummer that it has the cylinder deactivation, but I'm willing to take it so long as it means that we can still get a V8 in these trucks. And this also kind of comes on the heels of the Raptor R with the new, Shelby V8 essentially is what it's running in there. So Ford is doing a couple things to basically bring back a bit of old school feel in these trucks, and I can really appreciate that. Anyways, that's all I've got for you guys in this video. Hopefully you found it interesting, and definitely leave a comment down below letting me know what you think of the Tremor package on the Maverick, and let me know what you think about them adding the V8 back in for the Tremor package on the F-150. I want to hear all of your guys' thoughts now that you've heard all of mine. But as always, I appreciate you guys watching, sticking it out to the end, and I will see you next time.